the time that you spent on this, you were...
So that was 9 months.
You were able to see all the aspects of the media that you saw more up front than we saw. We saw the end result. And there's been a lot of blame thrown around on how the media handled it, as well as law enforcement. From what you saw and being up close and personal with these individuals, what did you take walking away from this? I mean, it seemed like there was a rush to pin the problem.
Well, the media screwed up at different times than the cops, but in different ways. But the media, including me, I mean, I was writing for a salon and getting it wrong too.
How so?
Well,
again, was it just like a rush to judgment? We needed to have a face with the problem, which is where like the Marilyn Manson things.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I'll tell you.
All that jazz, the bowling for Columbine theories.
Yeah. It happened really, really quickly, and I don't know if I've told this story before, publicly, but so the first day out there, I think I was telling you I'd go run back to the phone and talk to Joan, my editor, and she would tell me like, here's what's coming over the wire, here's what's being reported on NBC and different TV and stuff, and there was all kinds of stuff about targeting minorities and targeting jocks and the trenchcoat mafia. And I had been hearing about the trenchcoat mafia. But that other stuff, I was like, I've not heard that from a single survivor that I've run into the park.
Only the media.
Yeah, and like the longer we got in the afternoon, the more they were getting it. And I was saying, I'm not hearing that. I'll go back and ask. And I'd ask kids and like, no. And it was coming through. It was all over TV by that time. I went back and read through the transcript of CNN for the first 4 hours, and you can see how it develops. Over hour by hour, it
just blossoms.
Exactly. 1 hour is much more so than the next. And the way people are phrasing questions instead of like, what were the kids like? Were they loners or outcasts or something? Like an hour later, so we're hearing they're loners and outcasts. So you're leading the witness, and kids are saying yes. And then they're hearing it on TV, so they're parroting it back. So that went on, but I was sort of oblivious to that by being in Clement Park. And so
this is one of the first instances where witnesses were being kind of polluted by the media because it was so instantaneous and so available to them.
Yes, it really was.
They were able to see themselves being covered and hear the product of that coverage, as true or untrue as it may have been, and then take that and go, well, that must be...
Exactly. And also cell phones were they weren't ubiquitous at all in 1999, but more so in this fairly affluent community. There were a hell of a lot of them out there. So everybody, everybody either had a cell phone or had a friend. People were sharing and helping with each other. So everybody had access. Virtually everybody had access
were getting
to a cell phone. Very quickly. And the kids who were in the school, hundreds of kids were trapped in the school for 3 hours or more. Every school, every room in Columbine, every classroom has a TV in it. Now, some left the TV on, some turned it off, some had the volume down, but were watching with subtitles or whatever. So a lot of them were monitoring by TV. And then came out, and we thought they were fresh, people who had been untouched by any media, and we didn't realize they'd been watching us, listening to us for 3 hours. But so anyway, the upshot is, because I was working alone, I was a freelancer, and I didn't have a cell phone, sort of Mr. Low-budget guy and by myself, didn't have the benefit of what all these other networks had so I wasn't tainted either by this.
You say benefit, but in reality, it was a detriment to keeping integrity of the story. Right?
Well, no, wait, we're getting a little ahead. So I wrote the story, and so when Joan would question me about this stuff, I said, I'm not hearing this stuff. So she said, okay, I'll trust you. So the first story we posted had nothing about targeting, no jocks, no targeting African Americans or anything like that in there. Right. It did have Trenchcoat Mafia, because I had heard that, which turned out to be wrong. But other than the Trenchcoat Mafia, I had no myths in my first story. But I left it around 9 o'clock, got in the car, and I live about 40 minutes from there. I didn't know the short way yet. It took me about an hour because I didn't know where the hell I was. So I drove the long way.
You can't follow the helicopters back up.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know there were certain shortcuts. But so it took me. So for the first week, I was taking an hour drive out there. But so I feel silly now. I don't live an hour away, but I thought I did. So the whole ride home on the radio, it was all about targeting. It was jocks. It was about African Americans, and so I spent the ride home thinking I'd completely blown the story, and I missed the gist of it. I mean, so this was really a lesson for me on how powerful packed journalism is.
Right.
I got the whole way home sweating. I'm like, the biggest story of my life. I completely blew it.
Dropped.
Got home, turned on the TV. It was everywhere. I got up in the morning, watched the Today Show everywhere. Flipped around to various different things, listened to NPR, Good Morning America, but mostly stuck to the Today Show because that's actually an introduction to Katie Couric, and I found out she's really good. She did an amazing job. I think she's an empathetic, really smart person, incredibly underestimated. But anyway, so I went back and rewrote a couple passages and inserted it, and we printed at the bottom of the story, updated, I think it says updated April 21st or whatever, and with wire service reports. So I went back, and I heard all these things, but then so I went to the AP story and got, their specific stuff, and rewrote it and put it in there. We had access to AP, Salon has it, so we credited with wire service reports, and added that to my story. And I inserted all the junk the next morning. And at that time, now Salon, they would keep a record if they changed something, or they wouldn't do that. They would post an updated version or something, but they would keep the old one. Then they didn't. And
you inserted this because of kind of a peer pressure, fear of being.
I assumed I was wrong.
Yeah, I clearly can't be the only person, right?
Yeah, there were hundreds of reporters out there,
right.
And to me, it's sort of an arrogance thing of like, oh, I got it wrong and everybody else got it, or I got it right and everybody else got it wrong.
I can't possibly.
I assumed I had screwed up. And I was wrong. So I actually have compassion for, we talk about packed journalism and how awful it is. But you know what? It's, whether you're covering the campaign trail or anything you're covering, it's really hard to be that lone wolf and to be like, saying like, no. Or whether it's, the reporters who, wasn't there somebody at Business Week who was trying to blow the whistle on Enron years earlier, and somebody blowing the whistle on Bernie Madoff. Anything that comes along, there's always, it turns out there was somebody who was saying, hey, beforehand, but nobody was believing them. It's hard to be that guy. Yeah. And it's hard to believe that you're right. So, the pack mentality is powerful. Your peers are pretty smart. The New York Times and, CBS and ABC, they have pretty good reporters, working for them. And who've been around a long time. So when they're all going in one direction, everybody's listening to each other, you tend to do that. So I saw firsthand, and I had this pristine story with almost none of the myths, and I buckled and inserted the myths. And as I should, I have the story now showing that I got it wrong because I buckled the next morning and got it wrong. But it didn't have to be that way.